Hello, welcome to another Becoming a Modern Man. We are playing Mono Green Tron, and this time we're running up against Hollow One, or Rakdos Hollow One. So this is our opening hand. We have an Urza's Power Plant, Chromatic Star, Ancient Stirrings, Expedition Map, Oblivion Stone, Dismember, and an Ulamog. Obviously, having one land is not ideal, or one Tron piece, but we have a good number of ways to find the rest. I'm going to lead with Urza's Power Plant into Chromatic Star. The next turn we can Ancient Stirrings, hopefully finding another Tron piece, and then we can run out the Expedition Map, and then we will have turn 3 Tron. But obviously we'll be mildly tapped out on turn 3, so we won't be able to use that mana immediately. But that seems like a fairly good line, and I think hopefully that'll work out for us. So I'm reasonably happy to keep this hand on the play. Maybe it's Burning Inquirer, which kind of potentially messes with us a little bit. So fortunately, we don't end up discarding any of the cards that we particularly rely on. We end up discarding a Wormcoil Engine, an Oblivion Stone, and an Ugin, which is fine. Our opponent pitches a Faithless Looting, a Hollow One, and a Collective Brutality into the graveyard, and then gets to cast a free Hollow One. Which obviously is very powerful, turn 1 Hollow One, but we do have Dismember ready to deal with that. And additionally, we hopefully will have Tron online shortly. So Chromatic Star finds us a Urza's Mine, which is nice, and Ancient Stirrings finds us the following 5 cards. Of the 5, it's not the best set of cards we could have seen with Ancient Stirrings, but I like taking the Wormcoil Engine here. Wormcoil Engine is going to be very difficult for them to beat if we manage to stick it, because obviously we will then have a big threat, basically can block any of their creatures favourably, and also will be gaining us a substantial amount of life. So it is pretty tricky for them to beat that. Faithless Looting's pitching a Bloodghast, and then playing a land to get that back, and attacks us for 4, and then follows that up with another Hollow One. On our turn, we are cracking this Expedition Map to find Urza's Tower, which is going to give us 3 mana to play with. I'm going to lead with a Chromatic Sphere. Also, we drew a second Dismember, so we can actually answer both of these Hollow Ones here and now, which is what we're going to do. Ultimately, it will cost us 4 life a piece to deal with these Hollow Ones, so it's not immediately favourable, but it will save us a lot of life in the long run, I think, and obviously leaves our opponent just with a Bloodghast on the battlefield, which is fine, particularly if your opponent doesn't really have any follow-ups, because we're going to be dropping a Wormcoil Engine soon. But it has Tasigur, which is somewhat annoying, but obviously still can't attack profitably through this Wormcoil Engine, which we're going to drop. And we're also able to drop a Chromatic Star there in readiness. Didn't want to crack it because we actually don't have any green sources at the moment. So if we do draw into an Ancient Stirrings or a Sylvan Scrying, I think it's probably just better to have the ability to activate the Chromatic Star and find green mana. We draw into Oblivion Stone. I mean, awkwardly, we haven't found a land for some time, but I think it's fine. We've still got plenty of gas, and our opponent isn't interfering with our lands in any way. Flamewake Phoenix is going to have to go, unfortunately. Do look to draw a card here, just because I do want to find another land, ideally, so we can play more than one spell a turn. But or just get this Ulamog going, which obviously would be pretty nice. We're going to be able to exile the Flamewake Phoenix here with Karn, and still have Wormcoil up. Our opponent plays Bloodghast and a Flameblade Adept, but no attack still, as he still doesn't have a good one. And here, I don't know, for whatever reason, oh, here we go. It didn't work last time. I played this replay. Oh, so So basically what we did is grind up a chromax. We used a chromax star, found Sylvan Scrying, went to get a Urza's Tower. We exiled a Flameblade Adept with the original Karn, and then played a further Karn, which took out Tasiga, and now we're actually able to attack profitably with this Wormcoil engine. So we're just going to be attacking in for 6, which would allow us to go up to 10, and yeah, our opponent concedes to that. There was an alternative line there, I suppose, in that we could have just played a really big Walking Ballista, which would have been able to ping off the Bloodghasts and again make our opponent's attacks pretty unfavourable. So a lot of ways we could have won the game there, but I think I like this this line pretty nicely, and this works out pretty well. I mean, I suppose attacking we do open up our Karn to dying, but we're pretty far ahead at this point, and our follow-up would have been an Ulamog, which could have taken out both the Bloodghasts permanently, and I think our opponent would have had a pretty big struggle to win from there. So yeah, a concession from our opponent I think is fairly well warranted. So let's go on to sideboarding. So this is our sideboard. So against Hollow One, we've got Nature's Claim. I quite like Nature's Claim. Obviously, it's just a 1-mana answer to Hollow One, which is pretty good. I mean, there is a risk in bringing it in the sense that it's really only an answer to Hollow One. If our opponent draws Flameblade Adepts and Gurmag Anglers and Tasiga and the like, then this is going to be a bit of a dead card. So I think there's a risk, but I think probably worth bringing in 1 or 2 of these just as a quick and easy answer to Hollow One. Thragtusk, also very good. Gains us 5 life, which obviously stems the bleeding quite well. And also it trades with all of their creatures, and then leaves behind a 3/3, which at the very least is going to be able to chump block Bloodghasts very nicely. So yeah, bringing in in Thragtusks seems good to me. We've also got a Graveyard Hate sort of package, as it were. Just expand that. So Bojuka Bog, I definitely like bringing that in. Ghost Quarter's not really doing a whole lot in this matchup, so I'd probably just straight swap Bojuka Bog for Ghost Quarter. Obviously, and then we've got Relic as well. I don't know if it's necessarily worth bringing in the additional Relic, but obviously they've got various things and shenanigans that are going on with the graveyard in terms of Bloodghasts, Faithless Looting Flashbacks, and Flamewake Phoenix. But I don't know if it's necessarily worth, as I say, committing too much onto that game plan in the sense... I mean, I suppose also you've got Delve creatures, so if you can stick an early Relic, it probably will be pretty good. But I don't know if it's necessarily worth going in too far in on. Bojuka Bog, definitely worth bringing in. We got Grafdigger's Cage. I don't think I would commit as far to running this. It does prevent them, as I say, flashbacking, faceless looting, and using the Bloodghasts and Flamewake Phoenixes, but I don't think it's necessarily worth devoting an additional card to. I prefer playing Relic over Grafdigger's Cage. Needle doesn't do anything. Spatial Contortion isn't powerful enough to kill most of their creatures. You could bring in Warping Whale as a way to counter their Burning Inquiry / Faithless Looting. And it also is capable of exiling Bloodghasts. But I'm not sure it's really the card we want in this matchup. But I suppose it does have some uses. Thornot Seer, I'm not sure. I mean, I suppose potentially it could be good. But it is going to die to most of their creatures, and you can trade with Hollow Ones, I suppose. So it's not bad, but they're not really going to be interacting with us putting Tron together. So I kind of like building up to our bigger things. I'm not sure Thornot Seer is necessarily what we want to be doing. terms of cards we want to be taking out, I think Emrakul probably wants to come out. We can probably afford to cut at least one of the Ulamogs, so we don't want to get rid of all of our top end threats. Ugin also doesn't seem very impressive in this matchup. Obviously, it's very difficult for him to exile their delve creatures because of their inflated mana cost, and the same with Hollow One. Actually, you can't exile Hollow One because it's colourless. Dealing 3 damage isn't good enough against most of their creatures, so I think Ugin's pretty bad. I think I definitely want to take him out. Karn still seems good, obviously exiling their permanents and potentially damaging their hand otherwise. Worldbreaker again seems nice. It can exile Hollow One, and it's a huge creature, so it can block favourably against basically all of their creatures, so that seems good. Walking Ballista again can soak up some early damage, and it's nice to have an early creature to play. Wormcoil, as we saw, was pretty good at holding back their team and making it very difficult for them to block, so I'd like that. Dismember, very good. Oblivion Stone's probably a bit slow. I don't know if we maybe want to cut possibly 1 or 2 of them here. It certainly has its uses as a removal spell, but it might just be a bit slow, and we possibly better off just having our creatures in the deck. But I probably wouldn't get rid of all of them just because it is a mass removal spell, which might be handy. So yeah, I think in general we probably want to be taking out some of our higher end threats, bringing in Thragtusks, Bajuka Bog as a way of dealing with their graveyard, and maybe some number of Nature's Claims just as an easy and cheap answer to Hollow One. And that's our approach, really. Okay, so we're back with game 2. So this is our opening hand. We have Urza's Mine, Urza's Power Plant, ×2, Wormcoil Engine, a Worldbreaker, Chromatic Sphere, and an Expedition map. So we've got 2 Tron pieces and an Expedition map to find the third, so I feel pretty good about this hand. We also got the Wormcoil Engine that proved so powerful in the last game. Opponent leads off with Blood Crypt into a Burning Inquiry, so probably worth checking out what happened there. Opponent didn't have any follow-ups, which is nice for us. Faithless Looting and Bloodghast went into the bin, as did a Street Wraith. For us, unfortunately, we discarded our Urza's Mine, which is pretty painful for us, given the quality of our hand. Previously, obviously that hurts quite a bit. We draw into Nature's Claim, which would be nice if we do encounter a Hollow One. It's going to drop a Chromatic Sphere here. Opponent's going to get his Bloodghast back. And I believe he has an Angler to follow up, which obviously is somewhat unfortunate. Draw into Thragtusk. We find Urza's Tower, and we're going to play this Expedition map. It's going to bolt us, play Goblin Law, which pitches a Ancient Grudge into the graveyard, notably. I'm going to be able to put Tron together here. Obviously we're a little bit behind by 8 ball here. We're down to 10, and we're not really able to cast anything. Well, there's another Bloodghast, which comes in with haste thanks to us being on 10 life. So we're going to get down to 1 here. Unfortunately we don't find a green mana source, so we can't play Thragtusk, which actually would be the preferable play. We're able to play Wormcoil Engine, but unfortunately that's not going to be good enough, because our opponent is able to use this Bloodstained Mire to search up a Stomping Ground, end of turn. So basically he can flash back the Ancient Grudge, so the play here is that he attacks, we have to block the Angler, and then our opponent can Ancient Grudge, so we don't get the lifelink, and so we just die basically from there. And that was game 2, unfortunately. Okay, here we are with game 3. This is a pretty nice hand. We've got 2 Tron pieces. Chromatic Sphere into Sylvan Scrying into turn 3 Tron. So that works out pretty nicely. Obviously we have to be aware that our opponent potentially could have a Burning Inquiry, which would be a little bit annoying, but hopefully that'll come together nicely. Obviously if our opponent doesn't have a Burning Inquiry, we're very well set up with this hand. So opponent leads off with a Faithless Looting, pitches a couple of lands, but no follow-up, so pretty bad break for our opponent. Or maybe they didn't keep a very good hand, I suppose, is the other side of that coin. So we get to play our power plant and find a tower. We also have an expedition map as well here, in case our opponent is able to disrupt our lands in any way. One plays Goblin Law, pitches Blood Moon, which it turns out is something that he's running in his deck. So Nature's Claim seems all the better for that. So we've got our Tron together. We don't actually have anything big to play because our expedition, our Thrag Tusk requires green mana, which we don't currently have an easy way to access. So we're going to run out the expedition map here. I could have cracked it immediately. I decided against doing that on the basis that potentially our opponent could cast a Burning Inquiry or something similar, and then we end up tutoring for our land and then accidentally discarding it, which obviously wouldn't be great. I think we're probably just going to be looking at finding a basic forest here with the map. Opponent cycles a Street Wraith. There we go, the Gurmag Angler is the follow-up play. She's absolutely fine. We can dismember it, but we don't even need to, so it's absolutely fine. Play the Forest. We draw into World Breaker, which actually might be better than Thrag Tusk here, because it actually doesn't even need to trade with the Gurmag Angler. Also means we can put our opponent down to 3 mana, so our opponent down to 2 lands, so potentially he's not going to be able to flash back the Faithless Looting here unless he has another land drop. Opponent attacks with Angler. I'm happy to block here. Presumably he has a Lightning Bolt or something along those lines to finish off the World Breaker, but that's absolutely fine, because we can get World Breaker back from the graveyard with its ability, potentially, which might be very nice later on in the game. And we have alternative threats which are going to work out pretty nicely. So Bloodghast comes down here for our opponent. Again, absolutely fine. We're going to Chromatic Sphere, find a Wormcoil Engine. Oh, sorry, I went to skip through that too a bit fast. So yeah, actually we took a different line here rather than playing the big spells. What we did is we used our Chromatic Sphere to Sylvan Scrying up Bojuka Bog. Then we dismembered our opponent's Bloodghast and then cast the Bojuka Bog. That way we got to exile our opponent's full graveyard. And so no Faithless Lootings and no recurring Bloodghast. So we didn't need to take that line. We could have just played another bigger threat, like the Wormcoil Engine or the Thrag Tusk. And either way would have worked out pretty well, but I think like this really sort of limits our opponent's options. His delved creatures he's not likely to be able to cast, and he's obviously out of threats. I thought about bringing back the World Breaker here, but it's not really necessary. But in theory we could have end of turn sacrificed the Bojuka Bog and put World Breaker back into our hand. But given that we've got so many threats, we might as well just keep our lands, I think. So going to play Wormcoil Engine here, pass the turn, because obviously if everyone doesn't do anything, then we're going to tick up a ton of life, which works out pretty nicely. Opponent cycles a Hollow One and concedes. Our opponent's pretty far behind at this point. and it's only going to get further behind realistically. That went pretty well. I think this matchup's pretty good for us in general. Obviously, it's kind of just a race. They're trying to drop a load of huge dudes before we can drop our big threats, because in general our big threats outstrip theirs. Wormcoil Engine's very good. They don't really have a lot of ways to disrupt our mana. See, this opponent was actually playing Blood Moon post board, but they don't have a lot of ways to interact with us favourably. We have some nice cards in the sideboard which deal with their threats, and also some good main deck ways of dealing with them. Dismember is obviously quite useful in killing off anglers and hollow ones, etc. So yeah, I think this matchup seems pretty favourable. Obviously, as long as you don't get overrun, or like they don't have something ridiculous like 2 or 3 hollow ones dropping on turn 1 or something like that, then I think we're in with a pretty good shout of taking this one down.